In this video I will break down my filter stack setup that I use with my Fuji X100V to produce movies and photos. Also, I will give you a guide to develop your own filter stack setup that is perfect for your own use case. Stick until the end of the video where I share some tips of buying these filters so you don't waste some money like I did. Let's jump in with the first layer of my filter stack. The first filter is an obvious and it's the Promist filter. So the 1/4 Promist really lives on my Fuji X100. I have on during the day and especially during the night to give some soften of the skin tones and give some extra glow for the light sources in your image. One little problem you can run into with the Promist filter is when you shoot during the day and you get some light straight up in your camera, it washes the image out a little bit, but there are 3 solutions where you can get a little bit of contrast back of your image. So the first one would be to buy a lens hood that blocks the light from coming into the lens. The second one would be just block the light with your hand. And the third option is setting the dynamic range in your Fuji X100 or X100V directly to the dynamic range setting of 100, so you get a little bit more contrast out of your image. I have a special edition of this Promist 1/4 filter that you can screw on directly on your Fuji X100 line, and it also weather seals the camera because it lives directly as first layer on your lens. Then the second layer I have on top of my Promist filter is a circular polarizer, and this is just to give some extra density to your image. This is kind of a little cheat code I love to add on all my cameras, and also if you are shooting some cars or some subjects with smooth surface, you can reduce the reflections by a good amount, and also in something like a leaf that is wet, there is always some reflection, and with the circular polarizer you can filter that out and get a lot more of color in your image. You really can reproduce this effect in post-production to the full amount, and it also will require some extra work that we don't need to do. The downside of using a polarizer will be it also cuts some light. So if you are shooting in a low light situation, you maybe have to detach your circular polarizer to get the most amount of light coming into your lens. And finally, the third layer is just for filming, and this is the McKinnon Signature Edition vnd-filter I attached recently to my kit, because if you are shooting in a bright sunlight situation with the X100, you have some internal NDs, but not to the extent where you can shoot wide open with your lens during the daylight. So if you attach some VND filter in front of your lens, then you can stop down your f-stop to the lowest number, and I really like to have this option if I need to. What I also like about the McKinnon version of this, it has this bronze finish to the metal. It kind of sets a little accent in my setup, and also the coating of the glass is kind of greenish bluish, so it also looks pretty cool, I think. The VND filter is just for filming in bright situations. I also will detach that or leave it home even when I'm going out at night or in the evening, and I know I don't need to stop down the camera that much. And the good thing about this filter stack I have here is you can detach and modify your filters for every situation. The only downside is I can put on a square hood, which I think it really adds a cool character to the Fujifilm cameras, and also it's beneficial to cut the light if you got some light in your lens. And then the VND filter, actually I got that as a gift, merci Niki and Alex, and this is really an addition you only need if you shoot video. I don't think when you shoot just photos you need a VND filter, so you will be good to go with just layer 1 and layer 2. Also considerable options for me would be this Shortstache everyday filter. This product is also from Polar Pro, like my vnd-filter, and it combines the circular polarizer with the quarter stop of Promist filter. And I think this is really a cool addition. I don't think you can screw it on directly to your Fuji camera. You would have to need an adapter for this. And with my setup you can skip the adapter, and therefore the whole footprint of the camera gets a little bit smaller. And I quite like this because I want to keep my setup as clean as possible and as minimal as possible. What I also would like to test are the Freewell filter packs. There you have a lens hood attached with a circular polarizer and the Promist included. I think this is the only option where you can have a polarizer with a lens hood or a square lens hood attached to your Fuji. This also would be a good option as long as you don't need to cut the light for filming. I think these two options are really the coolest out there, and if you are only photographing, I would highly suggest that you check one of these products out. There's also a company called Square Hood where it's doing some really cool variations of the lens hood. I don't think you will benefit from anything that affects your image, but it really looks fantastic and well designed. So if you want to build your own Fujifilm filter setup, I have some questions here for you that you can ask yourself before buying a filter stack, and just to find out what you really need and what you really want. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, do I want a lens hood, for example the square hood option, on my Fujifilm or not? It also adds a little bit of bulk to the camera, but if that is something you don't mind, then this is really important questions to ask yourself, because then you can't really attach anything else. Or you go with the Freewell option, then you have the option of, I think I didn't see any VNDs, but you have the option of polarizing. Then the second thing I would ask myself is, what kind of aesthetic do I want to go for? Do I want to have a look like some Leica cameras where you have some square hood attached? If you have some pure filter stack without the lens hood like I did, there are some options of different metal coatings. For example, mine is in bronze. You also have companies like Moments where are doing some red coating on the metal, and also the coating of your last layer before you expose it to the world I think matters a lot, because my camera has some kind of greenish bluish shine to it, and I think that's a cool little extra detail that adds some character to your setup. There are also different options of coating, or maybe you want to go with the clear look, or also if I detach the VND it's totally black. Or this is also an aesthetic that I think looks pretty good on my camera, because then the whole camera gets black. Also, what you have to ask yourself is, how big do I want my camera to be? Is it really important for me to not attach too much and keep it as minimal as possible? Then maybe you can go with just a Promist filter, so your footprint doesn't get bigger. If you want a stack like this, I think then this option would be the smallest you can go. And if you add some lens hoods, then the camera quickly gets a little bit bigger. But some people like this. They also attach some thumb grip and some extra grip at the bottom. Even if you buy the exact same filter type, you can decide. There are some filters especially designed that are extremely thin, and there are some filters that are bigger and doing the same job. For example, the VND filter that I have is a little bit on the larger side, so the options are really endless in terms of filters. Also, a really big question is, do you want to film with your Fuji or not? If you are not planning on filming with it, then you can skip the VND. But if you want to film with your Fuji and maybe you're planning on getting some VND filter, You also have keep that in mind for the rest of your setup. If you don't consider this when buying a lens hood, maybe your lens hood won't fit after you buy your VND filter. You really have to plan out your setup and how you shoot in advance, so you don't end up with some kind of kit that is not compatible with the things you want to do. Also, you have to keep in mind, what filters do I want to detach? Maybe you want to detach your polarizer during the nighttime like I do, or maybe you want to detach your Promist filters because you have to. These are just things to plan a little bit in advance of buying your first piece of filter. And also I wanted to mention some mistakes I did. The first one will be, don't buy the cheapest version out there. For example, the polarizer, you can get really cheap ones, but the polarizing part of the filter is just attached with some glue. Over the time, the glue loosens, and then you end up just spinning around your metal part without doing anything. This could result in ruin some of your shots where you don't have the polarizing doing what you need to do, and you may be realizing it when it's already too late in the post-production. Also, some filters that are cheap can result in some color shifts in your image. Especially this is a thing if you buy a VND filter, a cheap one, and screw it all the way to the fullest, then you maybe end up seeing some artifacts in the sky or color shift over the whole image. This also can happen with polarizer. Sometimes it even gets a cool effect in your image, but most of the time we want to have full control over things like that. And what I would suggest for these cases is when you can go to your local photo store and test some filters out. And if this is not the option for you, or you don't want to do it, then just check the reviews of the filters and only buy some trusted brands. If you're still here and liked what you saw, I would love to hear your opinion on my filter stack in the comments. And if you never recorded some video with your Fuji camera, check out this video.